Welcome everyone to the battle between two heavyweights here, Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. They are fighting for the third place and $100,000 at the Las Vegas Grand Slam of Freestyle Chess 2025. The third place is $100,000, the fourth place is $60,000, so there's a difference of $40,000 as Hikaru gets ready. The first game between them in 30 plus 30 format ended in a draw. Now this is the second game. The players shake hands and off we go. Hikaru a bit disturbed with some sound there. D4. He opens this pawn and the queen opens up. Magnus plays C5. Wow. Insane move. If you take the queen, instantly comes into the game. It's quite possible. Hikaru can take the pawn. He can even push the pawn. Guys, this is freestyle chess at its best. Queen, pawn takes pawn. And he wants to then play F3, opening this up. What is Magnus going to do next? He goes knight to E6. He wants to take this with the pawn. And Hikaru goes pawn to F3, opening up the bishop. Magnus chops off. Knight takes C5 and now pawn comes up to E4, capturing the center. F6 played, opening the bishop here. Queen D2. And Magnus brings the knight in. Wow, a super complex position. Have to be careful about knight jumps here and attacking the pawn. Knight comes to E3. Hikaru defends the C4 square with his knight. And I love this move, B5. Capturing the C4 square, gaining space, opening some stuff up for the queen. Knight to D3, offering a trade of knights. And Magnus says, sorry Hikaru, I'm not going to do this. I'm putting pressure on B2 square. Bishop comes up to F2. White wants to short castle here. And Magnus Carlsen pushes his pawn to A5. The queenside pawns are gaining space. And Hikaru plays pawn to C3, a good move. He wants his bishop to come here, get rid of the knight. Knight jumps into C4. And I think that knight has to go. Magnus adjusts. Actually, Hikaru plays his queen to C2. He doesn't take the knight. Very interesting choice. And queen comes up to C7, stopping short castling, because if you castle short here, H2 is hanging. He takes finally. And Magnus quickly chops it off. Threatening bishop takes, queen takes, knight B2. The queen moves to D2 so that if you take, he wants to take back with the bishop here. And I love this move by Magnus. What an exquisite move. Rook lift, trying to get the rook to D6. Lovely chess. Freestyle at its best. Bishop C2. Attacking the knight here. And the rook comes into the center. Long castle on the board. Wow. He takes on A2. The pawn is lost here. Hikaru loses a pawn, but he takes the knight. And not a good idea. Bishop jumps in to C5. You can see here, instead of taking, he should have just kept rook He1. But Hikaru wants to do this thing where he solidifies his entire structure by getting the bishop to A3. Short castling. G3 played. And now rook comes to C8. The knight goes to F4. Hikaru is looking at the D5 square, but Magnus plays his pawn to E6, stopping it. Knight goes back, but already the position is utterly lost. I love this move, bishop A7. Putting the bishop on the long diagonal. The knight jumps into the center of the board, hitting the rook. Bishop takes it. And now you take back with the queen. What is Magnus's idea? He pushes pawn to D5. But this structure, as we've seen, is quite solid. So how is Magnus going to break through is the big question. Pawn takes pawn. And now bishop takes D5. Very logical. Magnus keeps his edge on the board. Although now, does Hikaru have any fighting chances? Queen to E3 played. Queen B7. Magnus is entering via the light squares. Rook E1. Somehow this bishop is super strong placed. Some sacrifices could happen, so you have to be careful. Magnus creates a luft, and rightly so. Why to worry about some counter attacks or something when you have everything under control? F4 by Hikaru. Maybe F5 is on his mind. to destabilize the bishop. Playing f5 is not a bad idea, but queen b3 even stronger, defending the bishop, threatening to come here. Rook d3 played, defending c3, and rook c4 attacking here. Rook e4 is a big idea. King d2 is trying to run away with the king. f5, I love this move. Again, rook e4 on the cards. Queen comes to e5. Even bishop e4, by the way, is a great move. Plays his bishop to e4. The e6 pawn is given up with a check, but Magnus understands these positions so well. Goes king h7, and now you must take on e4, but that's not enough after fe4. White is just lost there. He plays his rook to e3. He couldn't move his rook away here, by the way. Just an idea. Rook d6 is met with queen c2. It's game over. So rook e3, rook c6, attacking the queen. The queen has to move away, goes to d7. Can you pick up the exchange? Well, Magnus says, I have bigger ideas on mind. I'm going to defend this pawn first. Rook comes to d6. So Hikaru tries to save his exchange here, but after rook takes d6, queen takes d6, queen moves into c2. Is it all safe here? Well, not really. The h2 pawn is falling. Should we take that off? Yes, he chops off the h2 pawn. Brilliant job here. And now queen to e5 played. He goes back rook c6 with the idea of rook g6 and rook g3. Bishop comes into d6. And another pawn bites the dust. It's like as if the bishop on e4 is the final boss there on the board, and Hikaru resigns. He sees no point in continuing the game. Magnus Carlsen wins this, takes home $100,000. Hikaru finishes fourth. The tournament is won by Levon Aronian, second place to Hans Niemann. But this game that we just saw right now, what an exquisitely played game by Magnus Carlsen. Just showing deep chess understanding, showing how the pieces need to belong, setting up the pieces beautifully. And there he is. Let's have a look at the game in bit of detail. The move that I loved the most in this game was rook a6. Getting the rook into the center on d6 and pinning here. I mean, it's just brilliant. However, nothing happens just like that. And I think the starting point happened here where Magnus pushed his pawn to b5. He could already understand that getting this pawn up and this space is going to help him to get this maneuver rolling. And it did happen in the game as he got his rook into the center of the board. And after castles, bishop takes pawn, he had won a pawn, and Hikaru's idea of chopping this off did give him the stability of the structure here with bishop a3, pawn b2, c3, which looks very solid. But Magnus knew that he was going to break through on the light squares, as he did in the game where he played bishop takes, queen takes, and pawn to d5. And eventually the queen entered from here, the rooks came in, and when Hikaru pushed his pawn, the bishop settled down on the e4 square, and Magnus managed to win this game. This game was a pure showcase of how Magnus is a super strong freestyle chess player.